In the vibrant heart of 1960s London, a new band was born that would go on to define the genre of progressive rock. That band was Yes. It all began in 1968 when Chris Squire, a bassist with a distinctive sound and vision, crossed paths with John Anderson, a vocalist whose ethereal voice would become one of the most recognizable in rock history. The two met at a Soho nightclub called La Chasse, where Anderson was performing. They bonded over their shared love for vocal harmonies, especially those by Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles. Their musical chemistry was immediate. Soon after, Squire invited Anderson to join a group he had been playing with, called Mabel Greer's Toy Shop. This lineup included Peter Banks on guitar, Tony Kaye on keyboards, and Bill Bruford on drums. With this new configuration, and Anderson at the front, the group quickly evolved and decided to rename themselves. The name Yes, suggested by Peter Banks, was chosen for its simplicity, positivity, and impact. Their first performance as Yes took place on August 3, 1968, at a youth camp in East Mersey, Essex. Though they were still finding their footing, their potential was evident from the start. They began building a reputation on London's live music circuit, performing covers of songs by the Beatles, Traffic and Buffalo Springfield, often reinterpreting them with complex arrangements and vocal harmonies. The first album, Yes, 1969. In 1969, the band signed a record deal with Atlantic Records and released their self-titled debut album, Yes. It featured a mix of original material and ambitious covers like The Birds I See You. While the album didn't chart, critics praised its sophistication and potential. It was clear that Yes was not interested in pop stardom. They were pushing musical boundaries. The debut album laid the groundwork for their signature style, extended compositions, rich vocal layering, and instrumental virtuosity. Chris Squire's thundering bass, John Anderson's soaring tenor, and Bill Bruford's intricate drumming made them stand out. Second album, Time and a Word, 1970. Encouraged by critical praise, Yes returned to the studio for their second album, Time and a Word, released in 1970. The album took a bold leap by incorporating a full orchestra, a move that divided fans and critics alike. While it showed their ambition, the orchestra clashed at times with the band's progressive leanings. Tensions rose within the band. Guitarist Peter Banks felt sidelined by the orchestral additions, which limited his guitar parts. This led to his departure shortly after the album's release. He was replaced by Steve Howe, a guitarist whose technical mastery and versatility would become a defining element of Yes' sound moving forward. Despite internal changes, Time and a Word hinted at the direction the band would soon fully embrace, one marked by greater experimentation and complexity. The classic lineup begins with Steve Howe on board. Yes began refining what would become their signature progressive rock sound. The new lineup, Anderson, Squire, Bruford, Kaye, and Howe, was more technically capable and creatively adventurous. By late 1970, the band was already hard at work on their third album. It was clear that Yes was ready to move beyond being promising. They were ready to be great. The year 1971 marked a major turning point for Yes, the moment their early experimentation transformed into full-blown creative triumph. With Steve Howe firmly in place as lead guitarist and the band growing more confident in their ambitious style, Yes began work on their third studio album. What they would release next would not only define their career but also reshape the landscape of progressive rock. One evening, Elise was walking home from work when her chest clenched, a white-hot pain, like a fist squeezing her heart. She collapsed on the sidewalk. She woke up in the hospital. The diagnosis, a rare heart condition, one that had gone undetected for years. "How did you know to come in earlier?" the nurse asked. "That probably saved your life." Elise stared past her, mind racing. The mirror had shown her. But this time, it had shown the worst before it came. She returned home weeks later, pale and tired. The mirror greeted her with something new, a version of herself that looked normal, smiling, cooking in the kitchen. A simple life. No job, no high-rise, no ambition. It unnerved her. The mirror began to change more erratically. Some days, it showed her living in the countryside, painting on an easel. Other days, it showed her sitting alone in a small apartment, wrinkled and sad. Then back to business suits. A different man by her side each week. A child, no child, a dog, a funeral. She realized the mirror had stopped reflecting her desires. It was cycling through possible lives. Was it trying to tell her that the future was not fixed? Or worse, that none of it would come true? She confronted the shopkeeper. "You said it shows what I want to see," she said, slamming the photo she'd taken of the hospital reflection onto his counter. He nodded solemnly. It did. Until you stopped knowing what you wanted, she faltered. You placed your faith in the mirror's version of you. You stopped choosing. The mirror doesn't lie, child. It reflects potential. All of it, even the dark. The record featured now iconic tracks like Yours Is No Disgrace, Starship Trooper, and I've Seen All Good People. Steve Howe's eclectic guitar work, ranging from classical to country to jazz, added a new dimension to the band's sound. John Anderson's lyrics became more abstract and philosophical, while Chris Squire's bass thundered with melodic intensity. Bruford's drumming added finesse and unexpected rhythmic shifts, while Tony Kaye's keyboard textures anchored the music without overshadowing it.
The Yes album reached no.
4 in the UK and broke into the US Top 40, a remarkable achievement for such an intricate, non-commercial work. It was also the band's first album to feature only original compositions, no covers. More than a success, it was a declaration: Yes had arrived. Enter Rick Wakeman and Fragile, 1971. As the band looked to push further, creative tensions emerged. Keyboardist Tony Kaye was reluctant to embrace synthesizers and mellotrons, which John Anderson and the others saw as key to their sonic future. Eventually, Kaye was replaced by the flamboyant and classically trained Rick Wakeman, formerly of the Strawbs. Wakeman's arrival added a new theatrical and orchestral dimension to Yes. His mastery of the Minimoog, Hammond organ, and mellotron opened vast new musical possibilities. The chemistry of the new lineup, Anderson, Squire, Howe, Bruford and Wakeman, was electric. Their next album, Fragile, was released in late 1971. It was a mix of full band compositions and solo pieces from each member, showing off their individual skills and group cohesion. The lead single, Roundabout, became an unexpected radio hit and remains one of Yes' most recognizable songs. The album also featured Heart of the Sunrise, a towering epic that blended raw power and emotional subtlety. Fragile reached no. 4 in the US and no. 7 in the UK, with its elaborate cover art by Roger Dean, who would become the band's visual collaborator for years. Fragile cemented Yes' image as a band of bold imagination and grandeur. Close to the Edge, 1972. By 1972, Yes was a band at the height of their powers, and they knew it. They set out to create an album that would push their musical vision as far as it could go. The result was Close to the Edge, released in September 1972, widely considered their masterpiece. The title track was a single 18-minute composition that took up the entire first side of the vinyl LP. It moved through multiple musical sections, blending rock, classical, jazz and spiritual themes. Anderson's lyrics were mystical and layered, inspired by Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. Side 2 included 2 shorter, but still complex, tracks, and You and I and Siberian Courtroom. Every member of the band delivered career-defining performances. Wakeman's keyboard soared, Bruford's drumming was intricate and intelligent, and Howe's guitar playing was poetic and precise. Despite, or because of, its ambition, Close to the Edge was a massive success, reaching no. 3 in the UK and no. 5 in the US. It showed that audiences were willing to embrace challenging, expansive music, when it was done this well. But behind the scenes, the band was starting to feel the strain. Bill Bruford, always a restless soul, found the intense recording process and perfectionism increasingly stifling. Shortly after the album's release, he left Yes to join King Crimson, a shocking move at the height of their success. He was replaced by Alan White, a versatile drummer who had played with John Lennon and George Harrison. Yes songs and global fame before moving on to new material. Yes captured their 1972 tour in a sprawling triple live album called Yes Songs, released in 1973. It documented the band's grandeur on stage and featured performances with both Bruford and White. The album was accompanied by a concert film of the same name, further solidifying their place as one of the premier live acts of the decade. By 1973, Yes was no longer just a band, they were a phenomenon. They sold out arenas across Europe and North America, earning a reputation for blending musical sophistication with visual spectacle. With Wakeman in flowing capes, Dean's surreal artwork gracing every release, and music that defied categorization, Yes stood at the pinnacle of progressive rock. But their next steps would take them even further into the realm of ambition and controversy. By 1973, Yes had become one of the most successful progressive rock bands in the world. Their music had reached new levels of artistic sophistication, and they were filling arenas with fans eager for long, complex, and cosmic musical journeys. But with success came pressure, and the band's ambition, which had fueled their rise, now began to spiral toward excess. Tales from Topographic Oceans, 1973. After the massive success of Close to the Edge, John Anderson was driven by the desire to go even further. Inspired by Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, Anderson conceived of an album based on 4 Shastras, Hindu philosophical texts. He envisioned a 4-part musical suite, each section taking up an entire side of a double LP. The result was Tales from Topographic Oceans, released in December 1973. The 4 tracks, The Revealing Science of God, The Remembering, The Ancient and Ritual, were some of the most expansive and experimental the band had attempted. While John Anderson and Steve Howe were enthusiastic about the project, other members were less convinced. Rick Wakeman, in particular, was deeply skeptical. He felt the music was overindulgent and lacked cohesion. During the supporting tour, he famously ate curry on stage while waiting for his parts to come in, an act that became symbolic of his disconnect from the material. Critically, Tales divided opinion. Some hailed it as a spiritual and artistic achievement, while others dismissed it as pretentious and bloated. The chemistry that had once driven Yes forward was beginning to erode. Creative differences, ego clashes, and exhaustion from years of non-stop recording and touring created a volatile environment. The band's massive success had given them freedom, but it also left them without clear direction. Anderson, still the spiritual and artistic leader of the group, continued to push for grand, thematic music. But the other members, especially Squire and White, began to feel constrained by Anderson's vision. Steve Howe, too, was feeling the pressure of expectations. Patrick Moraz, despite his talent, struggled to fully integrate into the group's complex dynamic. By 1976, the band was in a state of quiet tension. They continued to tour and discuss future projects, but momentum was slowing. In many ways, they had reached the limits of how far they could push progressive rock within the traditional album format. The musical landscape was also beginning to change. Punk rock was emerging, and the elaborate grandeur of prog was increasingly seen as outdated by critics and younger audiences. Yes was at a crossroads. As the mid-1970s faded into the punk-fueled rebellion of the late decade, Yes stood at a fragile turning point. Though they had ascended to prog rock royalty, their elaborate compositions and spiritual themes were increasingly at odds with the shifting musical climate. But rather than retreat, the band chose to regroup and reinvent. Going for the One, 1977, in 1976, following a lengthy break and the individual pursuits of solo careers, Rick Wakeman surprisingly returned to Yes. With Patrick Moraz now gone, Wakeman's re-entry brought renewed energy and a subtle realignment of focus. The band relocated to Mountain Studios in Montreux, Switzerland, hoping a change of scenery would bring clarity. Released in July 1977, Going for the One was both a return to form and a bold step forward. The album balanced Yes' signature complexity with a more accessible and melodic approach. It featured the soaring rocker Going for the One, the gorgeous ballad Turn of the Century, and the spiritual epic Awaken, a 15-minute masterpiece many fans consider one of the band's finest achievements. Critically and commercially, the album was a success. It reached No. 1 in the UK and No. 8 in the US, proving that Yes could still command mass attention amid the punk explosion. Wakeman's lush keyboards, combined with Anderson's vision and Howe's precision, gave the album a sense of cohesion that had been missing since Close to the Edge. Tormato, 1978. Flush with confidence, the band quickly returned to the studio to record Tormato, released in September 1978. But where Going for the One felt focused, Tormato was fragmented. Creative disagreements plagued the sessions. John Anderson and Rick Wakeman favored a more symphonic sound, while Squire and White wanted a rock edge. The album's title, a play on tornado, and the infamous story of someone throwing a tomato at the artwork, symbolized the messy compromises within. Tracks like Don't Kill the Whale attempted to blend pop activism with prog stylings, while songs such as On the Silent Wings of Freedom retained classic Yes elements but lacked cohesion. Despite mixed reviews, Tormato sold well and charted in the top 10 on both sides of the Atlantic. But it was clear the band's internal chemistry was fraying. The production was murky, and tensions, particularly between Anderson and the rhythm section, continued to simmer. Collapse and Exodus, 1979 to 1980. By 1979, the band's creative frustrations reached a breaking point. Anderson was increasingly unhappy with the direction Yes was taking. Wakeman, once again disenchanted with the group's indecision and muddled production, shared his dissatisfaction. In early 1980, both Anderson and Wakeman left the band. Rather than dissolve, Squire, White, and Howe chose to rebuild. They brought in Trevor Horn, vocals, and Jeff Downs, keyboards. The duo behind the new wave band The Buggles, known for their hit video Killed the Radio Star. Together, this lineup recorded Drama, 1980, a surprisingly strong album that fused progressive structure with modern synth-pop energy. Horn's vocals echoed Anderson's phrasing but brought a new urgency, while Downs modernized the band's sound. Tracks like Machine Messiah and Tempest Fugit showcased a heavier, more rhythmic approach. Critics were cautiously optimistic, and the album reached No. 2 in the UK, but longtime fans were divided. Without Anderson, many felt the spiritual heart of Yes was missing. The Drama tour was professionally executed, but Trevor Horn struggled with the demanding vocals night after night. The weight of replacing John Anderson was simply too much. After the tour, Horn and Downs left, and Yes entered a temporary hiatus. A brief silence, then awakening for a time in 1981, it seemed Yes was finished. Each member moved on. Howe joined Asia, a new supergroup. Squire and White quietly worked on side projects. But Squire was still determined to keep the spirit of Yes alive. He collaborated with Trevor Rabin, a South African guitarist and songwriter with a knack for melody and rock punch. Joined again by White and later Tony Kaye, original Yes keyboardist, the new group began writing songs under the name Cinema. However, when John Anderson agreed to return and add his vocals, the band's chemistry was rekindled in a surprising and powerful way. With Anderson on board, the project could no longer be called Cinema. It was, once again, Yes. Though this rebirth wouldn't fully manifest until their landmark 1983 album, 90,125, the seeds were planted during this period of fragmentation and rebirth. Conclusion: the end of an era, the start of another. Between 1977 and 1981, Yes experienced the highs of rebirth and the lows of disintegration. Their classic era, marked by spiritual ambition and technical brilliance, began to yield to changing tastes and internal strain. But even as members came and went, the core spirit of Yes, experimentation, beauty and transcendence, never died. By the time the 1980s arrived, the progressive rock scene had transformed, but Yes was preparing to transform with it.
Guys, if you liked our story, then click the subscribe button, and also like and share the video. Thanks.